Well, it was so good for a half, and even in the third quarter, we looked like we're hanging on. But in the end, the Crows going down to Melbourne, but it was a good game nonetheless. So why don't we get right into it, shall we? Good evening, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Weekend Wrap, brought to you by CrowCast, of course. No Macca with us tonight, but I am joined by the lovely Nikki. How you going, Nick?
I'm going very well, keeping nice and warm.
Are you keeping up with all the... I can't keep track of all the games. I don't actually know what round.
I got no idea.
No.
Weekends, I just kind of tune out a bit.
Yeah, no, it's... it's all just rolled into one. But look, it's good fun having all this footy, and by and large the games have been okay. There's been some pretty good games, so not too bad. G'day to everyone who's watching us on YouTube and Facebook. G'day to everyone who's chatting with us on Discord or YouTube or Facebook or even Twitch, and g'day to those watching us on Twitch as well. Don't forget, if you want to join us on CrowCast, watching the or listening to the app. What am I talking about, Nicky? Listening to the cast while chatting on Discord. You can do it via our Discord app, or you need to go, or you can. I haven't even been drinking. Or you can go to our website, click on the live chat link. And follow your nose. For those watching the video at the moment, I'm just running through it with you. There's a Discord link there. You can go straight into our Discord app without even having Discord on your phone.
A few of the boys are complaining. Apparently, it's not on Spreaker.
Oh, not on Spreaker. I knew there was something I forgot.
We're off to a great start.
Look, g'day to everyone on Spreaker. Sorry, we've been chatting for the last 5 minutes. You missed all the intro and everything, but never mind. We got there in the end. How about you start watching it on bloody Facebook or YouTube? Spreaker's so 2018, Nick. Oh God. Anyway,
that was a decent year.
Oh, well, it wasn't a bad year.
We weren't as shit as we are now.
No, we weren't as shit as we are now. But never mind.
Girls won a premiership.
Yes, the who? Oh, and good on Erin too for joining up again for another year. She's going to play until she's about 50, I reckon.
If there's any player that could do it, it's going to be Erin. We did get some nice little draft picks in as well.
Yeah, look,
some good youth.
I was explaining just how good Erin is to my partner the other day, who's not really into sport all that much, and she's just such an impressive athlete, across multiple sports. And I'm pretty sure she's the type that would have been able to excel at just about any sport she put her mind to. So fantastic to have her running around again. Anyway, have you been watching much of the footy?
I saw a little bit during the week.
Yep.
So, and you're right, there are a couple of games that weren't too bad.
Yeah, no, look, the Saints Suns game was pretty good, I thought.
And the Collingwood Swans one wasn't. That was actually a really good Thursday viewing.
I didn't see that one, unfortunately, but nevertheless, what was the other one I thought was alright? The Essendon Giants game was pretty good as well. So now,
nice close one.
In keeping with the fact that I'm totally confused about which round it is, and
it's round 10 and round 11.
I'm totally confused about what day it is, and I'm totally confused about what I'm doing here. And
to help you out, because I've got my footy wire open and I'm switching back and forth between the two of them.
Yeah.
Round 10 finished on Friday. Round 11 started on Saturday.
Beautiful. All right, well, let's kick straight into the scores, shall we? Because, why not? But people are going to have to put up with the AFL website for the graphics tonight for these because I didn't have a chance to put them through. But look, it all started on Wednesday, August the 5th. No, it didn't. Hang on. So the last two games of round 10 were the Port Bulldogs game, which Port won 8-7-55.
No, that was the start of round 11.
No, it wasn't.
No. No, you're correct.
Oh my God, don't make it worse. Don't make it worse.
Sorry.
So round 10 finished off with Port beating the Bulldogs by 13 points, 8-7-55 to 5-12-42. Seems like 1,000 years ago. And then on the Tuesday night, we had the final match of round 10. Yes, we did.
No, we didn't.
Yes, we did.
No, we didn't.
When was it?
Was this Friday?
No, sorry. Yeah, no, right.
Essendon GWS is the last one.
Sorry. Jesus. Anyway, on Tuesday there was a match, and Richmond played Brisbane, and I thought Brisbane were very disappointing, Nick. Richmond 12-10-82. Brisbane 4-17-41. Brisbane just never really looked to be playing their own style of football.
Once again, they're Richmond's bunnies.
Yeah, they seem to be.
Under Fagan, they haven't beaten Richmond.
No, it'd be a worry for Brisbane because they're going to come up against Richmond in the finals, you would have thought, so unless they're lucky with the draw. So they're going to have to get that sorted out. On Wednesday, we had... Who do we have? Do you know what? On the
Geelong and North.
Geelong and North, that's right, we did too. But I'm actually helping you out at the moment, Nikki, because on the on the graphic at the moment, your name, Nikki, is above Macca's image, which I'm sure you wouldn't like. Anyway, Geelong played North on Wednesday, 13-12-90 to 9-3-57. Geelong getting up comfortably there, 33 points. And Geelong never cease to amaze me. They just continue to win matches and be around the mark. It's a credit to them. It's a credit to them. It really is. And they're doing it without their star recruit, Josh Jenkins, too.
That's probably actually why they're winning.
Anyway, and then we also played on Wednesday night. We'll get back to that one. Then Thursday, Collingwood 6-14-50 defeated Sydney 6-5-41 in what, by all reports, was a very good game of football.
It was indeed. But very interesting thing that came out of that was a player wearing illegal boots, and the club's gotten away without a fine or anything else, and yet Isaac Quaynor is going to be out for a couple of weeks because of massive gash in his leg. Yeah. We actually thought with the way they were holding it that he'd broken his leg.
Yeah. Tell me, this is a professional sport, and you would have thought that the equipment would need to be pre-approved by someone in the AFL before...
By the clubs?
Well, you would have thought, wouldn't you? I mean, that's reasonable, isn't it?
The clubs are actually responsible for it. Now, all of the players do have individual boot sponsors. So the vast majority of them do.
And you would have thought that equipment is approved. So how in the hell...
Yes.
How in the hell is a player able to wear boots that are partly aluminium studded? I just don't understand it. I don't understand it.
And the fact that Sydney have gotten away with a warning it shows once again how toothless the AFL is, because they have that equipment there, the rules. You break it, you pay the penalty, not sorry to Isaac Quaynor.
Yeah.
Which helps us out.
There are times when this bloody competition is so amateur, it really shocks me. But anyway, and then we had another entertaining game on Thursday night. St Kilda getting up 12-6-78. The Suns 11-8-74. The Suns would have been very disappointed by that loss, I would have thought.
Oh yeah,
but St Kilda,
I actually
going on
thought
their merry way.
I thought the Suns were a chance to get them. I really like the way both teams play. And whilst the Saints have been playing exceptionally well, I thought this was actually a chance for Gold Coast. And they nearly did it.
Yeah, I felt like they went away from their game style under pressure, Nick. I felt like St Kilda were able to confine them to the wings and keep them out of the corridor and just stop their fluid run when it counted. So that's
indeed.
That's inexperience from Gold Coast, and I reckon, look, they're on the rise. They got a great squad. Isaac Rankin, if you don't mind, and Jack Lukosius really starting to show his worth playing across half back. So a couple of gun South Aussies that it would have been nice to be watching in Crow's colours, but never mind. And then Friday, Callum Ward won an Academy Award, and as a consequence, the Giants got up 8-11-59 to Essendon 8-7-55. That was ridiculous, don't you think?
I haven't seen it, but Radicus in the chat has said there's been some great synchronised diving competition happening.
Oh, well, who was the other lad that... Patley did another spectacular dive.
Papley did a fabulous one.
Yeah, but Ward's wasn't a dive.
Was there?
Oh look, Ward's wasn't a dive. What Ward did, and he freely admitted it in the post match, he put himself where he knew he was going to get hit, and poor old Sean McKernan was going for the ball, right, and got to the ball at the same time that Callum Ward got to the contest, and Callum Ward took one for the team. He didn't dive, he didn't stage, but he knew he was going to get hit, and he got hit. And I don't think it was high. I think it was reasonable contact in play, and I think McKernan and Essendon were dead set stiff, to be honest. So never mind.
So this is actually something that we can actually relate back to, where Riley O'Brien protected his own space.
Yep. There's been a few of those.
Yeah.
There was one this afternoon as well in the West Coast Carlton game where I can't remember who it was. It was the Carlton ruckman, and he was just protecting space. You're allowed to do that in the ruck contest.
It absolutely baffles me as to who is actually in charge of the umpiring at the moment, because it's completely and utterly disorganised.
Gil McLaughlin's in charge of the umpiring because it's part of the.
It's shocking.
Part of the product. But those ruck contest block calls are just out and out wrong. If a ruckman takes position, he's allowed to keep the other ruckman out of that space and contest the ball. He's not. If a third person comes in and blocks the ruckman, then sure, it's a block, absolutely. But this situation where the ruckman is getting done in basically for holding the other ruckman at bay, to me it's a ridiculous call. It really is a ridiculous call. I don't know where that's come from, but it needs to be tidied up. Now, round 11.
We've started it.
Started with a classic on Saturday, Port v Richmond. Port, I know Richmond were a little bit undermanned, but that was a powerful win by Port, running away from Richmond in the end, 13-15-93 to Richmond 11-6-72. And
holding them scoreless in the last quarter.
Nick, how good are their kids? How good are Port Adelaide's 2018 kids?
Don't make me say it. It hurts. It hurts.
I mean, wow. Butters, Dersma, that young Georgiades is going to be a champ, I reckon.
I think a lot of people knew that about Georgiades. I mean, he's a very skinny kid, but
and he doesn't shirk it at all.
Oh, yeah. They knew that everybody knew that going into that draft that kid was something special.
Yep, he is something special. Absolutely. They got some good young kids, and they're all playing well at the moment. They're playing as a team, and they've got a couple of good old stages. Robbie Gray played very well, and they're looking the goods at the moment. And the other game on Saturday, Brisbane 14-12-96, getting up over the Bulldogs 11-6-72, a margin of 24. And the Bulldogs kind of suffering a bit from being around the mark, but they're coming up against good teams at the moment, and probably just not quite. They're probably middle of the pack at the moment, I would say, the Bullies.
Yeah, they do get to they'll sometimes go a little bit above themselves, and they'll beat some of those teams that are ahead of them. But yeah, I think you're right that they're middle of the pack at the moment.
Yeah, just lacking a little bit of class, I reckon, the Bulldogs. They got some good players, but just lacking a little bit of class. And then today, the Weagles coming from behind, 11-6-72 to beat a gallant Carlton, 7 goals, 850. Margin there of 22 points. West Coast really starting to click into gear now, and will be looking to make the most of their home games, because the reports are now that West Coast and Freo will be asked to return to the Gabba after, I think, round 14. So they're going to have to make hay while the sun shines and make the most of their Optus Stadium schedule. And the other game that's just finished that I haven't watched at all, Melbourne 13-14-92 to North Melbourne 5-5-35, a margin there of 57 points. So predictable result, that one, and who cares about that one, really?
Yep, same.
So thanks to the afl.com.au website, we'll look at the ladder. Oh dear. And it's a bit of a mess because we've got teams that have played 11 and 10 and 9, but top 8 we've got Port, and Port on top with 36 points, having played 11 games. Brisbane on 32, also having played 11 games. Then we've got the Saints and the Weagles on 28 points with a game in hand, so they could join Brisbane on 32 points. Then we've got Richmond on 26 points, having played 11. And Geelong and the Giants, and also Collingwood, or Geelong and Giants on 24 points, can leapfrog Richmond. And Collingwood on 22 can join Richmond. So Richmond sort of just there or thereabouts at the moment. They've played some good teams, but they've got the Suns next week. That's not going to be a pushover.
No, that's going to be an interesting game.
Yeah, it will be an interesting game. Just out of the 8, we've got the Bulldogs on 20 points after 11 wins. We've got Essendon with 2 games in hand on 20, so that might throw up a little bit of funny stuff. Gold Coast on 16 points after 10. Melbourne on 16 points after 9. Carlton on 16 points after 10. Hawthorn on 16 points after 9. 12. Fucking hell. North on 12 points, along with Fremantle and Sydney. And Adelaide Crows, we could have 20 games in hand, we'd still be on the bottom. With a horrible percentage as well, 55%. Goodness gracious me. However, it's not as bad as it could be, Nikki. It could have been a lot worse, because
it could have been a lot worse.
Look, I actually thought, and we'll just reiterate the score of the Crows Melbourne game. Where the hell is it? Far too many.
37-88. 5-7 to 13-10.
Yeah. So 13-10-88 to 5-7-37, as Nikki rightly pointed out. 51 points in the end. But really, a couple of goals down going into the last quarter. And it really could have been closer than that.
It could have. I think you were absolutely spot on last week when you talked about our fitness. Because I think that's purely and simply all it came down to.
Oh, no doubt.
Is that fitness in the last quarter.
No doubt, and I'll chuck up some stats in a minute that highlight that. well and truly. But look, I want to really try and focus on the positives of this game, because I felt for the first half in particular, and probably for some periods in the third quarter, it was probably the best footy we've played all season.
Yeah. I actually, there was some silly mistakes still being made, but I think you're right. And I liked the look of the team as
Yeah,
well.
yeah,
And I thought we had some of those senior players played their best games.
yep,
In Brown, who we've been quite rightly saying that, he's been a bit down. I thought that was his best game of the season that he's played. And I really liked the kids that they brought in
yeah,
and what happened. And we said last week that if Atkins, Knights, and Gibbs weren't dropped, then the club didn't know what they were doing, and they were quite rightly dropped. I think the selection we actually got was the right choices that were made. And I did think, I did have a little sneaky suspicion that Schoenberg, say it
yep,
right, was going to get a game soon, because the highlights packages they've been doing on the SANFL, which is very, very limited, but they've been starting to highlight him.
yep.
And that's what our club's been doing. I was just very annoyed that Melbourne, once again, have incredibly poor tacklers. And they seem to go after our players quite a bit, because I really, really, really wanted everybody else to see what Hamill and Scholl can do together in a team.
Yeah.
Because in the SANFL, they work together so well.
Yeah, well, it was a big shame for Hamill, because that's his second concussion for the year, and you would imagine that might see him rested for a couple of weeks, which in the context of this season could be 3 or 4 games. So a bit of a shame for Will. Lockie had a really good first half, I thought, and most of our kids. I thought Schoenberg looked a little bit overawed in the first half, but certainly in the second half, particularly in the third quarter, he really started to shine, and we got a glimpse of, I think, the makings of a top 10 midfielder, to be perfectly honest. If he builds a tank, Nick, he is going to be a top 10 midfielder in the competition in 2 years' time. That's my opinion.
Oh, he was really impressive. You could still see sometimes he was a little bit hesitant about where he needed to go. But when he made that decision, and there was just beautiful composure, absolutely beautiful composure.
Yeah, no, look, it was just very promising, I thought. I think there's a long way to go, and I don't know necessarily whether we've got the right cattle yet. I really don't know whether we've got the right cattle yet, Nick. But the players that we have got in tried their hardest, and I think that's all you can ask. I think there was a ton of effort by pretty much everyone on the field. We certainly didn't have any efforts like Gibbs and Atkins to any great extent, in my opinion. So I think it's a matter of just you want to hope that the list management committee are very ruthless about identifying the gaps in the squad, because there are a few. I'm starting to ask some questions of Mr. Fogarty. I'm starting to ask some questions about the way our back six is looking. Luke Brown worries me a little bit. He's been off the boil, but I think he's earned some brownie points. But I'd like to see him pick up his form a bit. And Tex is obviously the big one.
I mean, Tex is, he's not in the form that we know he is, but you look at what Himmelberg did, and for me, that's because Tex is in the side with him, and that is the advantage of still having Tex in that team, because we've seen what that forward line looks like the week before without Tex, that they are quite lost. He actually helps those younger players know where they should be going, and he encourages them on the field to do it, because we got Himmelberg crashing those packs a bit more and everything else. So I'm giving him a pass, because that's what we need from him at the moment. We don't need him to win the game off the boot. He's there to help develop and fast track those players. Fogg, I'm with you. I'm a little bit disappointed in too many blokes broke tackles from him. And I think he wasn't fully committed to those tackles. So I wonder whether he was a little worried about, because he's been done before for being too aggressive.
Look,
But
no, I think he lacks intensity at the moment, Fogarty. And
yeah,
my thoughts are, and we might just cover this off real quick now and then talk about it in more depth in a moment. But my thoughts, I wonder whether he needs to be given the keys to the forward line, and basically Tex needs to bow out, and we need to hand it over to Fogg and say, well, here you go, it's your forward line. Because at the moment he's playing like a bit player. He's playing like he doesn't quite know how to assert himself, and we haven't got room for two Tex Walkers in the team, and at the moment we've got two Tex Walkers in the team. And I think the real Tex Walker needs to bow out. I really do. Anyway, let's look at some stats, shall we? And I'm presenting it a little bit differently today. So you can see disposals. I've got the... Have you got the screen up, Nikki, at all?
I do.
Okay. So I split it up into quarters today, and you can see that by and large, disposals were fairly even in the first half. First half, North had 138 disposals, we had 137, so pretty much the same. But in the second half, it started to blow out. We only had 114 disposals in the second half. They had 151, so they certainly had more of the ball in the second half. If you look at the kick to handball ratio, you'll be able to see that Adelaide in the blue and orange there. In the first half, we were handballing. We were kicking far more than handballing, which was good. But have a look at that last quarter with the amount of handballs compared to kicks in the last quarter for us. Whereas Melbourne were able to use the ball by foot really, really well and break through quite regularly. Centre clearances were really good, except for that. First quarter wasn't too bad. It's only one difference. And I'm going to go back and highlight this in a minute, Nikki. But stoppage clearances. Have a look at that last quarter. Or have a look at that second half, really.
Yeah.
So
That is not good.
20 stoppage clearances to 2, including 0 stoppage clearances to 13 in the last quarter. And I didn't put any video.
Didn't give a peep.
Yeah, I didn't put any video together tonight because I'm currently working through some copyright issues with AFL Media. However, if you go back and watch the game, you can see we got absolutely slaughtered around stoppage. And when you consider that centre clearances, our clearances overall, in the first half we actually won clearances overall. But in it's that second half figure, and when I looked at it, I thought, I didn't think we got trounced that much in the centre. We actually didn't. We were 3-all in the last quarter, and we were 2-0 in the third quarter. It was around the ground.
Yeah, I thought Riley was actually doing quite well, and even Himmelberg, when he went in there, was doing quite well as well in terms of winning the taps. But that last quarter, that's why you had Matt Crouch hanging on to Oliver and other things like this. And the commentators are raving, he looks so fast. It's like, it's because we've tired, you idiots.
Well, it's fitness, Matt.
And they all got... Yep, and they all got absolutely slammed. Melbourne did, so they all bloody pulled their finger out, the bastards, which we thought was going to happen.
Well, yeah, but I don't know whether that was necessarily a factor. They looked bigger than us. They looked faster than us. They looked fitter than us. And, there's a lot to be said for the fact that at the moment, our team has got a lot of underdeveloped players. And it's not limited just to the small kids. Elliot Himmelberg has been in our system for how long now? 3 years?
Yeah, I think it's about 3.
I reckon my biceps are bigger than his. Like, what's he been doing? Did the gym get locked and they've lost the key or something? These kids
he had a massive growth spurt, and when you have that, you actually do have to. You can't put on the the bulk.
You can still do bicep curls, Nick.
You can do some stuff, but when all of you is still growing.
Nick, I did weights all through my teens and it didn't hurt me at all. The lad has got no definition at all. And you get definition and tone by more than just resistance work. You get it by hard training as well. And we've got too many of our players at the moment that lack muscle definition, they lack upper body strength. I actually wonder whether there's a big rejig of our whole fitness program on the back of that disaster in 2018 where we just kept pinging soft tissues the whole time. And I just wonder whether we've had to have a bit of a reset now. I'm not in any way or shape or form saying that that's the case, but that's the only thing that I can think of, because it just seems that none of our players have put on any bulk in the last 12 to 18 months. And if you look at a lad like Ben Keys, he's rock solid through the upper body. He's come from a different program. So, I don't know. And look, Chase Jones trying to chase Jack Viney around is like a kid trying to chase an adult around. Just, it's never going to work.
Yeah.
So what else? Look, there wasn't a lot else different. As you pointed out, the hit-outs were fairly even, although Melbourne got on top again in the last quarter. But I felt that we actually didn't do too badly. Where Riley, I think, and we'll go through some individuals in a minute, but where Riley didn't do as well as he usually would do is actually around the ground. I felt like his effectiveness around the ground, O'Brien, I don't know how you saw it, Nick, but I felt his effectiveness was just a little bit off.
Yeah, he wasn't doing a lot of those contested marks as much as what we have seen. And I think he was probably a little bit more mindful, because Gawn's not too bad around the ground. So I think he might have been a little bit more mindful regarding that.
Yeah. And just as an aside, how the hell did we miss that young lad from the Wineflies that's playing for Essendon at the moment? What a gun ruckman he's going to be. Did you see him play?
No.
Oh, just some lad that they just pulled out of Ranella. And he's fantastic. He's like a young Brodie Grundy, for God's sake. It's ridiculous. Look, marks around the ground. Again, we were dominated in the second half. But if you have a look at our uncontested possessions, I think you'll see that the reason for that is the fact that we were dominated in uncontested possessions in the second half as well, which meant that they got a lot of free ball, which didn't help us at all. Score involvements, look at that in the second half again. Melbourne just sharing the ball around, even in the second quarter.
Our second quarter's not bad.
Huh?
Oh, no, I was looking at the other one. No, sorry. It was a bit behind.
There's a bit of a delay, yeah. Those score involvements, it's just indicative of the fact that we're not really sharing the ball around terribly well.
We didn't really score in the third quarter, so you'd think it'd be a bit down.
No. But the other one that I wanted to just highlight, if you have a look at our inside 50s numbers here, again, in the second half, we were dominated. But then, if you add into it tackles inside 50, those numbers from Melbourne in that last quarter compared to ours, when they had the ball in their forward 50, 11 tackles inside 50 in the last quarter out of 14 inside 50s. We had one tackle inside 50 from 5 entries. And it just shows you that Melbourne were just absolutely hell-bent on keeping that ball in their forward 50 when they got it forward. And if you have a look at what do you reckon our best quarter was? The first?
Probably the first or the second.
13 inside 50s and 10 tackles inside 50, Nick. There's a correlation for you. So, some good signs and some bad signs. 1%ers, I never know what does that even mean?
It's a whole lot of different things. But they're kind of the signs that the bad signs are the ones that we've talked about. They're still there.
Yep.
and I don't think they're going to go away for a while. But you're right. I actually felt a lot more positive about this game, just purely because of the kids, the endeavour that was brought in, and yeah, there's still stuff that we know are a massive problem. They're not a little problem; they're massive problems.
Yeah.
But there's some nice signs for the future, and one thing I do want to point out, because there was in the chat just previously that people were talking about, we've got all those small midfielders. We've got a bloke that we haven't really heard too much about in Ronan O'Connor, who's a very good midfielder from WA. And he's not a little boy at all. He's very tall.
Yeah.
And he's a pure midfielder.
Yeah. He's a similar build to Paddy Cripps, isn't he?
Yes, he is.
Yeah. If he's got half his skill, he'll be very handy.
Yes. So I think we do definitely have some positives for the future going forward, but our issues are still around our senior players. And what is that game plan? I still don't quite know what it is.
Now, look, again, when I was watching the game, I had a few moments earmarked to put on the video, which I didn't end up doing, but the amount of times I saw blokes not willing to give the first option and not willing to make that 45-degree change of angle kick. We are not making ourselves difficult to play against at the moment.
No.
This up and down the line stuff, it's schoolyard footy, and with modern zones and all the rest of it, you need to be able to change lanes. You need to be able to get those quick 45s off, and it takes a little bit of courage, Nick. It takes a little bit of courage and a little bit of confidence in your own skill, as well as your teammates actually running to make position. And I felt like in the second half and in the last quarter in particular, when we'd run out of gas, the options dried up. There were less options running through. The leads into those spaces were not as decisive, so they were more easily ignored. And the problem is that when a bloke led into that space, he didn't then clear out for the bloke behind him to come in, and so those areas of the ground got clogged up really quick, and so we were just forced to kick down the line. And when we were able to free it up and go through the middle, we looked okay. But Melbourne did really well in keeping our run down and forcing us to kick long down the line. And we've seen that we just don't have the personnel to be able to play that kind of game. We don't have, aside from Riley O'Brien, we don't have a pack marking tool.
Yeah, and most of the time O'Brien was staying back to the pack mark of when the ball was invariably coming back. And to me, that came down to fitness. That was that fitness, that desire that they needed to spread. They needed to run away from that kick down the line.
I agree.
And that's all it was. And I was frustrated by the end of the third quarter because we got a lot of the ball, but we just wasted it. And I think it came down to that fitness and that desire to create the space. Yeah. And that's one of the most important things in football, is to create space.
Yeah.
It's often the most thankless thing to do on a footy field, but it's the one that it results in your team winning.
Well, there were a couple of good signs. When you talk about game plan, though, Nick, there were a couple of good signs. And the main good sign that I saw was the fact that we were not flat-footed at centre bounce contests.
Even Matt Crouch wasn't.
We weren't bodying up. We were in movement. Ben Keys benefited from it a couple of times, but I think that contributed to our centre clearance numbers, because all of a sudden we're essentially winning centre clearances. We won the centre clearance stat for the night. Now, when was the last time that the Adelaide Footy Club won centre clearances for a match? I can't remember.
2017?
Yeah. So it was. I don't know where that edict came from. Whether it came from a little show called CrowCast with a Mick. G'day, Mick, if you're listening. Thanks, mate.
We're here to help.
But look, it was very noticeable that we didn't body up. We were on the move. We were starting deeper, and Riley was hitting into spaces rather than trying to hit it to a player. So there were two key differences, and it really resulted in, Melbourne got their fair share as well, particularly early, but the simple fact is that we got quite a few decisive centre clearances, and I hope that they persevere with that, because if we look at some individuals, if I just chuck up Benny Keys's numbers, he really benefited from that. He got 2 clearances in the second, 2 in the fourth. What did Matty Crouch get? Let's have a look. Matthew. Matty Crouch, 4 clearances. They're the sort of numbers that you want to start getting. Even Harry Schoenberg got a centre clearance in the third quarter. I don't think
It's
Chase.
a very nice one.
Chase didn't play a lot in the middle after half time, did he? Well, not even really after quarter time. So, I think Riley might have got a couple. Yeah, he got one in the first quarter. So, we really benefited from having a much cleaner structure in the centre. Unfortunately, they spent all their week working, or all their 5 days working on centre clearances, and they forgot about stoppage clearances. But I think that was down to strength.
Forward
and fitness.
entries.
Forward entries. Inside 50s, is that the one you were talking about?
Oh no, I was just saying that we still need to work on that.
Well, forward entries, that's a product of the up and down the line thing, though, Nick.
Yeah, it is.
We're not cutting through half back, and when we get to that dead zone, which is that zone between wing and half forward on the boundary side, and all we do is kick it into the pocket. It's the most ridiculous kick in football.
And invariably, it's to one of our tools, but they've got 2 players on them.
93 players
and
hanging
nobody,
off them. That's right.
And no crummers, because they're still up the ground. They haven't got back yet.
Yeah.
Whereas those guys hit it across the ground to them.
Yeah.
Because there's some good marks.
Well, I think we missed McAdam. Benny Crocker, I was a bit disappointed with his work. I didn't think he was anywhere near as dynamic as we saw earlier in the season.
Yep, agree.
So, as a consequence, we didn't have a lot of options up forward, and we ended up looking like we were playing quite tall. We had Tex and Fogg and Himmelberg down there for most of the time, and we just needed a bit more from Stengel when he was there, although Stengel played a little bit through... Stengel wasn't there. Who am I talking about? Crocker.
Murphy.
We needed... Murphy.
Crocker.
That's the one I'm talking about. And Murphy, unfortunately, plays quite high. And he doesn't play as that at the crumb small forward, although he did get a nice crumb goal early on in the game. So McAdam shows... that game showed that McAdam will be quite a valuable piece in our forward structure, because I think he's a point of difference. But we highlighted it last week in our little video thing, that the amount of times we get it in that dead zone and we're not prepared to be patient and get the ball across the ground and open up the forward line and kick it to the fat side, we just bomb it in and bomb it in and bomb it in. And it makes you wonder, Nick, if you're a footballer and you do something 100 times and it never works, why do you keep doing it?
Because you want the coach to yell at you?
Well, I can't think of any other reason, because it's just like doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result. It's just not going to happen. But there's no secret, in my opinion, that we're lacking coaching. Obviously, the club is struggling under the pandemic restrictions to be able to get cohesive coaching going, match simulation. I don't think they're able to do match sim at the moment. So
no, they're not.
It's with a young squad and with, let's face it, part-time assistant coaches. It's little wonder that we're lacking structure at the moment. So I'm not going to hang the coach on that or the players right now, because I think it's just very difficult. But you just would like to see them think on the ground and just try something a little bit different to try and get a more decisive forward 50 entry.
Agree.
Let's have a look at some individuals, shall we? Because that's what we like to do. Now, Matty Crouch. He had a reasonable game. What do you have? 16 disposals in the first half. Got a bit quiet in the third quarter. 10 disposals in the second half. But again, his kick to handball ratio is the one that always tells you what you need to know about Matt's game, and unfortunately there's a hell of a lot of handballing going on there. That's 7 to 9 in the first half, which isn't too bad, but 2 to 8 in the second half. And that's what Matt does when he gets tired.
He goes back to the handball.
He goes back to the handball because he hasn't got the physical strength or fitness, the tank basically, to break free of contests. And look, they really ramped it up too. I mean, I'll show you quickly Clayton Oliver's stats. Have a look at that for a second half. 14 touches in the last quarter, 21 touches in the second half. After being held relatively quiet in the first half, he had 5 touches in the first, 8 in the second. But that second half, Petrarca much the same. His is in reverse to Matt Crouch, far more kicking than handballing Petrarca, and therefore far more damaging.
He's also got a much nicer kick. To be fair.
Yeah, well, that's true. Jack Viney's another one. Particularly in the first half. I wonder, did they move Keys off Oliver onto Viney? I couldn't really tell, but it looked to me as if Keys was shadowing Oliver in the first half.
Yeah, and then because Viney was getting off the chain a little bit, so then they moved him onto Viney, which meant Oliver was off the chain.
Yeah.
And Crouch kind of was at some stage. I know a couple of times in the last quarter, Keys was trying to get to Oliver, but he was smart enough to make sure he was manned up on Crouch instead at some of those stoppages.
Yeah.
And if you're going to try and exploit one of our midfielders, it's Crouch you're going to try and exploit when you've got pace.
That's right. Matty Crouch, what else do we want to have a look at? This is what worries me. Things like this, his ability to impact the score. I know he's a link player, but he only had 1 inside 50, and that was in the last quarter. His score involvements, 3 in the first half, which isn't bad, but only, again, 1 in the last quarter. It's not enough from our number 1 midfielder. He turned the ball over 4 times. He had a lot of uncontested possession, which meant that other people were having to do the legwork. The other thing too is the one thing that I will say that he tackled much better. 8 tackles from Matt Crouch is a good return.
Agree.
So, look, on balance, it wasn't a bad game from Matt. I don't think he's anywhere near his 2017 form. But it's probably the best game he's played this season.
Close to. What was the other one earlier on in the year? The first game Brad was out. I actually thought that wasn't a bad.
That was about round 3, I think.
Yeah, and that wasn't a bad game. It's kind of sad that he actually plays better without his brother in the team.
Yeah. We've talked about that a lot, haven't we? Look, Benny Keys had a really good game, I thought. He had 9 possessions in the first half and 11 in the second half. If we look at his kick to handball ratio, pretty balanced there. Pretty balanced. 2 to 1 in the first, 3 each in the second, 3 to 2 in the third, and 2 to 4 in the fourth. So not too bad. But his strength is obviously in clearances. He did really well in clearances. He had 2 in each of the first 3 quarters and 1 in the last. So that's a pretty good return if we have a look at where he influenced in terms of clearances. Whoops. Pardon me, I just messed that up. Clearances. We have a look at his stoppage over his centre clearances. That's what I wanted to do. Let's bring that back so that we can actually see it. There we go. You can see that he was actually the only one really getting much stoppage success, really. Although again in that last quarter didn't have any. But he's good at centre. He's good around the stoppage. He's just strong, isn't he, Nick? He's uncompromising. He's strong.
Yeah.
And he can hold the line in heavy traffic, which is what I like.
And I think he's probably surprised himself with how well he's also doing as well. He's just consistent across. He's a very consistent player, and we did talk about earlier in the year that the one thing that does let him down is sometimes his disposal and the kick doesn't quite get there. But his consistency and the fact that, you know, the coaches know they can give him a job to mind a player, but he can go and get it himself.
Yeah.
Which is a great thing to be able to do.
I would like also for him just to, like, probably a similar thing to Matty. I'd like him to get more value on the scoreboard for his involvements. You see, he had 4 inside 50s, which was pretty good. His score involvements, though, only involved in 2 scores for the night. And I think that's an issue I have with a lot of our midfield, and I think, again, it comes back a bit to fitness, Nick. Then they're usually only getting involved in certain parts of the ground, and you rarely see our how can I put this? You rarely see our midfielders impacting with decisive passes into the forward 50.
It's normally the forwards passing into the forwards.
Exactly, it's the Tom Lynch or the Lockie Murphy or the Tex Walker or, you know, someone like that that's passing in. It's rarely a Matt Crouch or a Ben Keys or a Chase Jones or, you know, whoever else is playing through there. Seaman's probably our most effective if you have a look at Seaman. You know, he had 3 score involvements in the first and 2 in the second, but then dried up after half-time. I was actually really disappointed with Seaman's second half because he had such a good first half.
Yeah, I was going to say, his first half was so good.
All Seaman's stats are pretty much, if you have a look at his disposals, although he got 5 disposals in the last, but it seemed he was at his most efficient and effective in the first half. After he got that hit from that guy that fired him up briefly, it seemed to put him back. Harry Schoenberg, as I said, looked a little bit rattled early in my opinion, but gee, that's not a bad second half. 8 touches from the lad in the second half. They're good numbers from a first gamer. His kick to handball ratio is really good too. Even though I felt like he looked like he lacked half a yard of pace, he's very composed in traffic, isn't he?
I think he was just being a bit more careful.
And see it at PJ Crow's in the chat too. Thanks for dropping in, mate. Sorry, keep going.
Yep, see you, PJs. I think he's shown quite a bit of dash in some of the highlight videos we've seen from the SNFL and previously also his strike one, that he does have a quite nice turn of speed. I think it was just that little bit of that hesitation coming in. So I hope he stays in the team for next Tuesday.
Yep.
And it'd be interesting to see, particularly up against that Collingwood midfield, what does he do there? I mean, he really needs to look at side bottom. And
yeah, that's the type of player he is, isn't he?
Just go with him. Watch him. Play like him.
Three score involvements in the second half, which is really good. He had three inside 50s for the night. Had a stoppage clearance and a centre clearance as well in the third quarter, where he looked. That was his best quarter, I would imagine. His third quarter, just looked quite composed. Was able to get outside as well. Had a number of uncontested possessions. What's that? 3, 6, 8 uncontested possessions. And didn't really turn it over all that much. In fact, he didn't turn it over at all because he got a negative turnover in the last quarter, according to Footy Wire. So look, not a bad start from Harry. So Rory Laird, what do you think of Rory's game?
I thought he looked a lot more engaged in the midfield. I think he kind of knew a little bit better about what he should be doing in there, but there was still a few little lapses that had me yelling at the television.
Yeah, I feel like Rory might have found his spot a little bit, at least in the short term. I think he's enjoying the freedom.
I really like him as part of that midfield rotation. Just his lapses he just gets a little ball watchy.
Yeah, he does.
And I think that just kind of needs to be held back a little bit. But the fact that he's been mostly training with the defence and he's only just now being able to train with the midfield, I think that shows that you've just had to throw him in there and go sink or swim.
Yeah. Look, again, my criticism is in this particular stat here is kick to handball ratio. He had 8 handballs on only 1 kick up to half time. And right at that, maybe got a message at half time because he had 5-2 in the third quarter, but then 1-3 in the last. So, there's a lot of handballs there, and we need raw, and that's probably indicative of the fact that he hasn't been playing in the midfield and is getting used to the speed in there, because you don't see him break away all that much. But I feel like Lairdy's one of the few who does have a little bit of breakaway ability in terms of his first 5 steps. So,
yeah, and he was doing a real nice fight in that midfield and stopping them getting a breakaway. So I was really pleased with that aspect of the way that we weren't giving up the centre clearance.
Yeah. A good portion of Lairdy's game was his tackling. He had 4 tackles in the first quarter and 7 for the match, which was very good. His clearance work fell away after half time. He had 3 clearances in the first half. One of them was centre and 2 was stoppage, but went missing after half time around the contest, which was a little bit disappointing. But worth persevering with, particularly at the moment where we're lacking experience in that midfield group, and with Brad out, Brodie Smith not making it for this game, and probably not being the answer in terms of that sort of grunty sort of inside mid. A lot is on Rory Laird's shoulders over the next 4 weeks until Brad Crouch gets back to be able to hold the fort and support, your Chase Joneses and your Harry Schoenbergs, etc. Who else do we want to talk about? Chase Jones. Let's talk about Chase Jones. What are we going to do about Chase Jones, Nick?
They were mostly playing him off half back, from what I could see.
He had 3 disposals for the match, 1 kick, 2 handballs. To me, at the moment, look, I'm a big proponent of keeping him in the team, but even to me, at the moment, it looks like he needs a rest. And I'm probably last cab off that rank. Everyone's been saying it for the last 2 or 3 matches. But if he can only get three touches in a match, there's something wrong.
Yeah, and if they've taken him out of that midfield rotation because he was just getting a bit too bodied up, etc., they've put him on that half back line. Yes, he's being mindful for a player, but our halfbacks are supposed to be quite proactive,
Mm-hmm.
and he just wasn't quite getting there. Then I think, yeah, just give him a rest, manage him like they've done with some of the others. I'm actually quite impressed with the way that they've managed like Stengel and McAdam, and they did a little bit with Macasey or Casey, and they've brought him back in. And Fish, he lost his player a couple of times, but I think he looked a lot better.
Yeah, I thought Fish looked better. But Chase, to me, playing off that half-back line,
Yeah.
he needed to be, when we're talking about providing those 45-degree angle options, that was his role. That's part of his role across half-back. And I really didn't see it. It seemed like he was still trying to play a midfield role by getting to the next pack and all the rest of it, instead of actually trying to create short options. Again, he's probably not benefiting from our lack of match sim at the moment, but he's a see ball, get ball type, and to see him only getting 3 touches when the ball spent a lot of time in the forward 50 for the Melbourne Footy Club in the second half, I'm willing to concede that the time has come for him to have a little bit of a rest. Particularly, I think he comes out for Brodie Smith.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
there's no shame. There's no shame in that.
That's a fair kind of swap.
Yeah, there's no shame in that for Chase. I'm a fan of his because I reckon there's a lot to work with, but at the moment he's just not getting the pill. And his effort in the last, when Viney kicked that goal, and he just looked completely confused around that stoppage. He was actually double teaming another player and let Viney just go. He looks very confused. He looks like he's overthinking it. He doesn't look. He either looks as if he's been overcoached or he actually doesn't know what his task is at the moment. So we need to sort that out.
He needs a refresh.
Yep, Lockie Scholl had a very good first half. Faded after half time, like so many of our young players did. But did very well. Had 6 kicks and 3 handballs in the first half. Only a handball in the second. But
looked composed.
Looked pretty silky, didn't he? In that first half, looked pretty silky.
I was just so pleased because I've been watching him for the last year in the SNFL, just going, get this kid in the team. I've been talking about Hamill and Scholl all last year. It's like, get him in the team. Get him in the team. That's why I wanted him in the team, and I was so pleased that he had such a good first half, and he just showed a couple of those little tricks. He hasn't done a left foot kick yet. Nobody's actually seen him do that in the AFL, but in the SNFL, his left foot's actually better than most left footers. He is completely dual-sided, which is a fabulous bag of tricks to have on a player that's either that running halfback or wing type player.
Yeah. No, look, a lot to work with Lockie, but again, so very slight. Such a light frame for a kid who's been in our system now for long enough to have, developed a little bit. Same with Will Hamill, He just got ragdolled by Neil Bullen. Just ragdolled. And Neil Bullen was slightly unlucky because the fact is that it would have been like swinging a kid around. And he got.
But unfortunately, as soon as you start turning somebody, you've got to let go.
Oh yeah, no.
They know that. I
reckon if Neil Bullen let him go halfway through that sling tackle, Hamill would have ended up in about the 4th row. Would have been like a hammer throw. But yeah, Scholl needs to put on some muscle, as do all of our kids, and that to me, fitness and muscle definition are the 2 things I think we're severely lacking at the moment, and all our kids show it. Who else would we like to look at? Let's look at Tommy Duday. As you'd expect, came into his own when the going was tough. had 13 disposals in the second half.
Didn't really want to stretch the hamstring out, though. There are a couple of times I thought you've given up on that chase a little bit.
Yeah, but that's probably reasonable.
Considering how bloody cold it was, yeah. And somebody who's done a hamstring numerous times, yeah.
Again, though, what I would say, and maybe this is a product of the hamstrings, I don't know, Nick, but handballed it a hell of a lot. In the second half, out of 13 disposals, only 2 kicks and only 5 kicks for the game. So that's 13 handballs, 5 kicks. And, you know, to me that just shows that, let's go back to the team-based uncontested possession count. And it just, in that second half there, we just got monstered in uncontested possession. And I think this high handball count that we had, this high kick to handball ratio that we had, was indicative of a team that just didn't have enough options, and that's obviously indicative of a team that can't run. Riley O'Brien, I thought was pretty good. What's that? That's 6 kicks and 3 handballs. As we showed before, did pretty well on the hit-outs. Got a couple of clearances too, one in the first quarter. Just never stops trying, a couple of tackles. I've noticed over the last couple of weeks with Riley, he's not clunking the marks that he was in the previous few weeks. He just seems his hands have gone off a little bit. But he's still getting to a lot of contests and bringing the ball to ground, and he took one absolute beauty across half back. I think it was in the third quarter, under enormous pressure. So I mean, my thoughts on Riley haven't changed at all. He's our number one ruck, and that's the end of the story. Elliot Himmelberg. Let's talk about Elliot Himmelberg. Nick, what do you think?
Definitely better than last week. That wasn't hard. Again, it was a bit of that need to spread and create space, which I've seen him do. And that third quarter, that he kind of kept plonking himself in that kick down the line, where I would have rather seen him try and be probably more him than Tex. To be one of those helpful ones, either coming through the centre half forward and into that midfield kind of space.
Well, I think you've got to have your big guy down the line, Nick. He's your bailout option.
But we had Fogg and we had Tex.
Yeah, but that's then Fogg and Tex shouldn't be running to that area. Yeah, but Fogg and Himmelberg, being your tall player, needs to be down the line. He's your bailout option. It's Fogarty and Tex and Tommy Lynch that need to be providing that shorter option. And you're right, they all run to that at one area, and magically none of them actually make it to the contest ever. But I'm not critical of Himmelberg there. He's still, to me, he's still very light in the contest, so he still gets buffeted out of position very easily. But he's very good below his knees.
He is.
Very good below his knees. And he does have a good footy brain. I worry about his lack of speed, and I continue to worry about his hands and his strength in the marking contest. Now, how long has he been on our list now? 3 years?
You know how I made the comment last year about his problem with marking is because he takes his arms straight up?
Yeah.
And that's why they're flat hands, and he can't mark it because he's got to tap it down. But we saw earlier this year, he actually had them out at the 10 o'clock.
Yeah, he's fixed that up.
But he went back to straight. He went back to straight up again this game. And I'm like, ah!
Yeah, but a lot of that is because he's pushed under the ball, Nick. He's pushed out of position.
Yeah,
he's not. He doesn't take a position and hold his ground. Unfortunately, he's too easily, and to me, that's indicative of a player who's actually getting to the ball, the drop zone.
A bit too early.
Too early. That's right. He's not jumping into the drop zone. He's getting into the drop zone too early, and blokes are coming in over the top of him. And he's got to be able to time his efforts, and also it's a lot to do with the delivery from down the ground as well.
Comes into it.
Yeah, but it's probably he's just sitting under the ball a little bit.
Would he benefit from coming a little bit more sideways at the contest?
Oh, well, most big players would benefit from coming sideways to the contest, really, because there's less opportunity to be pushed under or sideways. If you're coming from sideways, then you really can. If you're coming from sideways to the drop zone, immediately any defender that's behind you is out of the play. So it's not a bad technique, but unfortunately, if he's just there to take the bailout kick, then the ball's always going to be bombed, and he's not going to have the opportunity to make that position. So he's got to be a little. To be able to accommodate that kind of kick, he's got to be a little bit stronger. But that said, he wasn't assisted by the way the ball was coming down.
No.
And you know, you made a remark earlier about Tex Walker. I don't think Tex had a very good game at all. I understand what you're saying about it, experience and all the rest of it, but I don't think Tex was putting himself in the right positions. I actually think Tex was positioning himself. He was actually taking up space where he didn't need to be, and making it more difficult for blokes like Himmelberg because Tex draws players to him. So, you know, this is where I get back down to this issue of whether we need Tex and Fogarty in the team. I mean, we look at Fogarty's numbers and they're pretty shocking, really. He had 5 touches for the game, had 2 quarters, the second and the fourth, that he didn't touch the ball. Now, in the second quarter, we had a fair bit of it.
Yeah, I was disappointed.
Hello?
Hello?
Yeah, you just dropped out there for a minute.
I was disappointed in Fog because he got that nice free. We had him matched up on Lever, which was a great way to exploit Lever, and then they rejigged it to get Lever away from him, and I think we needed to rejig to get it back how we wanted it. They allowed the defence to dictate. And once he got around May, etc., who would be able to come off and do the intercept, he's not smart enough as a forward yet at the AFL level to exploit what he should be able to exploit.
Yeah. If you have a look at our inside 50s, and for those listening, if you want to mess around with these stats, they'll be loaded up on Patreon later tonight. If you have a look at our inside 50s in this match, what have I done here? Anyway, you'll notice that so we had 13 in the first and 9 in the second. So we've had 22 inside 50s in the first half, Nick. 22 inside 50s in the first half. And Darcy Fogarty, in that time, has had it 2 times. Taken no marks. Kicked 1 goal. Laid 1 tackle. I mean, he's got to be more involved than that.
He missed about 5 tackles.
Yeah, he's got to be more involved than that. You know, he had 2 score involvements both in the first quarter, but as I said, when you consider the amount of inside 50s that we had in that first half, 22 times it went into his area, and he hardly touched it. So,
I mean, to be fair, it was his first game back after being out for quite a while with that shoulder contusion, but still, I was a little disappointed. I mean, Vardy Magic, he makes the comment that he seemed to be protecting that shoulder, which is why he tended to be reaching for those tackles, and too many players broke them. If
don't
that was
bloody
the case,
play him.
Yeah, then he shouldn't have been playing.
We've got options. We could have brought the other tall lad in. What's his name? Frampton. We could have brought in Benny Davis, who, I don't know what's happened to Ben. Is he in quarantine for 6 months? But he certainly could have come in. There's a lot to be said for the fact that we could have played Tex deeper in the forward 30 and actually had Davis in to lead up a little bit more and played Himmelberg a little bit more traditional centre-half forward. I mean, there was lots of options. We didn't have to play Darcy. And you're right, he didn't look right. Vardy's spot on in that it looked like he was favouring that shoulder. So, I don't know. Was that a poor selection? I'm not sure. We got another game next Tuesday, so he's got a week to recover, but I would have much rather have seen Darcy miss and got that shoulder 100% right if, in fact, that was what the problem was. I'm not quite convinced that it was, but because I've seen Darcy play like it before, where he's always 1 or 2 seconds too late to a contest, or 1 second too late to lay that tackle. Do you understand what I mean? It's just off the pace of the game. Yeah, just off the pace of the game. So he's a little bit of a concern. But look, overall, Nikki, considering what we've dished up at times during the season, the disappointments for mine were probably Crocker and Jones. But aside from that, I felt like it was almost an all played well situation.
Yep, agree.
So, look, we're not going to have a 2-hour epic tonight, Nick.
There's no Macca.
There's no Macca. No, absolutely not. There's no Macca.
It's probably always my fault because I bring up something about off field the club and we have to go on that. So
you fire him up.
It's me.
You fire him up.
I fire you up as well.
Yeah, occasionally you do. But look, who have we got next week? We've got Collingwood. That's going to be a real test. Collingwood sort of also struggling with injuries a little bit.
They are struggling with injuries. They were in Perth. They had to fly to the Gold Coast. Now they've got to fly to us.
Yeah.
And if that accident injury to Quaynor hadn't have happened, they were out on their feet. Sydney were running over the top of them. Because it took so long to get him off the ground, it actually gave Collingwood a breather. So I think
I don't know.
That there's a chance to get Collingwood possibly here. Possibly. Well, if we bring that same intensity.
Look, the intensity is you're right, but our ability to run out 4 quarters at that level of intensity is in question. Now you're right, Collingwood's on a long road trip, and that's gonna play into their fitness levels. But they're a very strong side, Collingwood, very strong side. So selection again is going to be interesting. It'll be interesting to see whether they persist with Chase. It'll be interesting to see what they do with Maxey, whether they keep him back again or play him up forward again, and whether they keep Himmelberg in the team. Fogarty will be the second game in, you would expect, from a spell. But I just want to close off. I want to close off this cast, and I want to engage the people on chat. And anyone else that's listening to this after the event, put your thoughts on Twitter or Facebook. I honestly think, Nick, that Tex Walker should be hanging up the boots this week.
I think he's still got something to offer. But
I don't think he does. He can't kick over 50 anymore. He can't kick over 40 anymore. Have you seen the last couple of long shots that he's had? He's really dragged that leg around. That is not like him. That is not like him. And what that tells me is that he's no longer got confidence in that long kicking. And if he's no longer got confidence in that long kicking, that's because of his hip or because of his knee. He can't take contested marks anymore. He's of absolutely no value going up in contested situations, and in fact he clogs up space because he draws players to him. I haven't seen him hit up a burst lead for a long time. I understand what you say about experience, but we need to give these young lads the keys, and I think young Darcy needs to be given the keys to that forward line, and the only way that Darcy can take over and impose himself on a game is if Tex Walker is not in the game, in my opinion.
If he does hang up the boots, I'd like him to then give Hart the boot, and he becomes our forward line coach.
Maybe. I mean, I reckon my cat could probably do better than Ben Hart as a forward line coach. To be honest with you, he seems to get in good position, my cat. But look, seriously, and this, I'm not bagging Tex, but to my way of thinking, this is clearly Tex's last season. Doesn't matter what he comes out during the week and says. To me, this is clearly Tex's last season. And whether he retires or whether he decides to drop out and be there as a break glass situation and let Darcy come in, we cannot play Darcy and Tex in the same team, in my opinion. And we've wasted so much time with Darcy Fogarty. We need to give him the keys to the forward line, and the only way that happens is if Tex bows out. And that's my main reason for wanting Tex to give it up, is not so much for Tex but because of Darcy, in my opinion.
Look, I think Valley Magic made a very good point, though, is how lost we look when we didn't have him in the Roos game. And that's the issue. Is I completely understand where you're coming from, that they are too similar. And we had this debate at the start of the year about what are we going to do with Fog, because he and Tex are too similar. But it's that real fine balancing act of we've got to have that little bit of good experience around them, because he's one of he's one of the senior players that isn't pulling his weight in terms of what you just highlighted there. But I think he's pulling his weight in terms of actually helping the kids on the field. It's a bloody hard thing to do, because he is and has long been a big favourite of mine. But it's just such a hard thing to do, because if we go too young in that forward line, will it be the detriment to those players?
Look,
Macca would love me saying that.
Yeah, and look, I hear what you're saying, and you know, I'm looking at the chat here. You know, yes, we did look lost against the Roos without Tex in the thing, but that's no reason to keep Tex in the thing, because he's just taking a spot. Now, there's merit in having him in the coach's box, absolutely. There's merit in keeping him on the list until the end of the year and coaching these young forwards, absolutely. But having him in the team for experience robs another kid of a spot. And there are plenty of examples of you give the kid an opportunity and they'll take it. Gold Coast are currently showing that if you give kids an opportunity, they'll take it. You know, there's not a lot of experience in that Gold Coast team, and they're far more competitive than we are at the moment. You know, we've got more experience in our team than they do. So I think if you're going to understand whether players have got it or not, you've got to give them a run. And I don't think at the moment, we really understand what Darcy Fogarty can bring as a forward, because he hasn't been given the opportunity to play in the role that he was drafted to play, which is that lead up Jack Revolt type forward, right? And the reason he hasn't been given that is because he's always playing third string forward. And he's a laid-back country boy, and he's not going to assert himself when Tex is around, because Tex is his bloody hero. So Tex could tell him to do sit-ups in the forward pocket, and Darcy go and do it. We need to get Tex out of the system so Darcy can impose himself on the system, and so the three of those lads, Himmelberg, McAdam and Fogarty, can start building some synergy and some understanding between each other. And you want to put the argument about who's going to be in our next premiership side. Well, Tex Walker's not going to be in our next premiership side. So these are my reasons. It's I'm not shit canning Tex in the slightest, but his output is low. I mean, you've got to look at his stats. Tex's stats on the weekend. What do you have? 5 kicks. Took 2 marks. Didn't kick a goal. Wasn't involved in 1 score. Didn't have 1 inside 50, Nick. I mean, they're not... What is that? What is that?
Not good.
Well, and again, I'm not trying to shit can Tex. What I'm saying is the argument, I think, is for keeping him in the team for experience is outweighed by the argument that says that he is actually doing more harm than good in that forward line, not only because he's taking up space, but because we're not getting any output from him. 2 years ago, he would have nailed that goal from outside 50 without any problem whatsoever. He wouldn't have even broken a sweat. And now he's kicking across the body because he doesn't think he can make the distance anymore. He hasn't got burst speed. He hasn't got the overhead marking ability. He's not getting separation from his opponent, so he's not getting clear to hit up on a lead unless he gets way, way, way down the ground. And he hasn't got the fitness base to get way, way down the ground for long periods of time anymore. I just think he needs to make way. And it's a very hard call because he's a cult hero at Adelaide. And in many respects, he's been the soul of the club for a long time. But this is changing of the guard stuff, and I think Tex needs to fall on his sword. That's my honest opinion. If I'm being completely objective, even my son will hate me for this, but if I'm being completely objective, I think that Tex has to make way.
And we know that the club won't say anything. It'll be actually up to Tex himself.
It'll be Tex's call, and not many people are supporting me in the chat, and that's fine because I'm used to that. And I hear the arguments against what I'm saying 100%. But I don't think Tex is going to benefit from being in any other position. I feel like it smacked of a bit of desperation early in the season when we were trying to turn him into a second ruck to justify his spot in the team. I don't think Fogarty has got the fitness to play midfield. I don't think he's a midfielder. I think he's a dead set forward, Darcy Fogarty. And we've after 3 or 4 years on our list, we've got to work out whether Darcy Fogarty is the real deal, and we've got to develop him. And at the moment, we're not doing anything. He's just playing a bit part in a dysfunctional forward line. Hard truths, Nick.
You love them.
Kempy, Tex to a wing. You know they got to run on the wing, don't you? Come on, Kempy. I know this is all very, heartstring sort of stuff, but we can't be moving Tex to a wing. And Fog can jump, and he can put both arms up above his head as well. We need to give Fog the room to do his stuff rather than just running in behind Tex all the time. Anyway, I'm not going to argue the point. They're my thoughts. Give us your thoughts on Facebook and on Twitter during the week or on YouTube. I'm happy to hear everyone's thoughts, but they're my thoughts, Nick.
Fair enough.
Now, I reckon that's just about it for tonight. We've got Collingwood next. When is it? Tuesday?
Tuesday, 6:05.
6:05. Ridiculous time. But anyway, we'll deal with it.
Means I have to leave work at 4:30.
But
I will actually be going to the game.
Yeah.
Because it's at a respectable time. It means I can actually get home at a decent time and get to work on time the next day.
Well, look, thanks to everyone who's joined us on the weekend wrap tonight. An interesting discussion. G'day to Mako with his other commitments. Hopefully he'll be back next week.
4 other birthdays or something.
Oh, who knows? It's what happens when you have a big family. They all just want the bloody inheritance. That's what it is, Nick.
I think we deserve the inheritance more than them, don't we?
Yeah, that's right. We'll get a letterbox. Nick, thanks for coming along.
And Mrs. Macca to do the dishes?
Yeah, exactly. thanks to everyone who's joined us. We really appreciate it. Don't forget to give us a shout out on Twitter or Facebook about what you think about Tex Walker. Don't forget to share this video on Facebook or YouTube if you like the content, and hit us up on AFL CrowCast if you want to have a say on Discord. Nikki, it's been wonderful, but all good things
back
must
to the
come
old
to an
days.
end. That's right.
Just the two of us.
All right, guys. Night all.